Good morning, everybody. I hope you have your coffee. I definitely have mine to get started. I got a phone call from my cousin down south, and she said, I was following along on your video, and I was drawing it all out, and she said, and you didn't, I was hoping you would paint the poinsettia. And I said, oh, yeah, I guess I could do that. I could go back and do that. And she said, yeah, because I wanted to know what you were using to paint it. All you did was show that it painted, but you didn't paint it yourself. So I said, okay. So here's the video. And I'm going to dedicate this to Janice, my cousin. And she's mentoring me on how to keep it simple in the art for people just starting. I do forget. I've been painting for years. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an old Corel plate for my palette, and I have a little water on it there. And the first thing I want to talk to you about is I tend to use liquid watercolors, the Blick. I always tell you about that. So I'm going to put a red there. And I just put a dot on the plate. Now this is what, I have a little water on the plate, so if you want to get white, if you want to get a lighter shade of red than this, you don't add white to it, you add water to it. And see how that thins that out? And you always start pale and then you work dark, because once you put that on the paper, it's there. So you want to start light, like that. How I do that? There you go. I just mix it on the plate. Alright. So, I start out on the edge, like this, and on the edge here. And the reason is that the curvature of the petal is going to get established by laying another layer of red on this. Now I put the first layer, let me put this here, on this stem part, there. And I'll go around, I'll do all the petals that are red. Yes. There we go. Now there's two ways you can do this if you don't want colors bleeding into other colors. You have to wait till the watercolors dry totally. But right now I'm only working with one color. But when I get ready to work with the greens, I don't want any bleeding taking place, because red and green makes brown. Yuck. So right now, all I'm doing is laying a light color of red. Now I was talking to you about the Corel plate that I'm using as a palette. I don't know if you know this, but when they sent the shuttle up into space, the bottom of it is coated with Corel tiles. And that Corel takes so much heat. So when they did re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere, they were able to hold up to the intense heat. So I'm painting off a piece of history here. I'm just kind of going around so I keep my hand out of the paint. Need a little more water here. Almost forgot this one. Get a little pale here. Gets too pale, just add a little more pigment. Mix it on your palette, because once you put it on your paper, it's absorbed in so fast that that's it. Can't change it now. The only place you can really get rid of watercolors on paper is on the expensive watercolor paper. I just use cardstock for these designs because I have a bigger picture down the road. When I go to paint this, I'm probably looking at developing it into a Christmas card. Speaking of Christmas cards, I finally got all the galleries done yesterday. Yesterday was my birthday, and my 79 years old. Oh, I'm ancient. My cousin and I are 3 months apart in age. I found an old picture of 3 cousins who were born within 3 months of each other at their baptism. I was one, my cousin was another, and another cousin was there, and all 3 of the little mommies in the 1940s with their little hats and stuff posed with their babies. It's pretty amazing. I remember my baptism as an infant. I have an incredible memory. Now, I'm not ignoring these guys. I just don't know why I didn't think to do them, but I gotta mix some more color here. Okay. Anyway, at my baptism, it was a very cold, foggy morning. My sister was there. My mother, the other women. I don't remember my grandmother being there, but my great-aunt was there. And I was in a blanket, and the priest was holding me in his arms. He had a bit of a belly. I could smell the starch in his cassock, and I thought, who is this man? And then I could smell the water in the font, and it stunk. Because this was in Southern California, and the water down there is pretty terrible. And I thought that this was some kind of a drowning ceremony. They were going to drown me. And I started to scream. I just knew this guy was going to kill me. So, of course, all he did was take a little shell and pour water over my head. And he didn't drown me. But it was cold that morning. You have that on your forehead. What are they thinking? Okay. Excuse me. Now you'll notice that right here is a darker spot. And so we're going to start darkening up this leaf by adding more red over the red. And then I'm going to thin it out. So I'll add a little bit more red. It didn't take much, let me tell you. We'll go around and do this again. It needs a little bit more than that. Okay. Okay. Now remember, in order to make the leaves on a flower look round, you have to have dark edges, because we're going to go back in, and I want to make this darker here. This is in the shade of the other petal. So make that a little bit darker, add a little more red. Okay, I'm going to go around and do that again. If you want to, you can just leave one side. It doesn't matter, but I'm leading up to something here. I'm always leading up to something. Load that brush up again. Wow. Put it out there. You know, the poinsettia is a plant, not a true flower. It's just how they're treated that turns some of the leaves red, because I put them in the dark. And I've said this before, but it is really a plant, not a true flower. In my mind, anyway. Wow, that dried out really fast. That red. Now, I was watching an artist using Crayola washable markers. And I'm going to go buy a package of those at the variety store, which we call Dollar General. I used to work there. COVID stopped me from working there. I was so disappointed. I enjoyed the girls so much. Anyway, I'm going to get a set of those, and I'm going to try them out on another painting. And actually on cardstock, they move better than what I'm using right now. Now, I get a kick out of people saying, well, you know, they're not archival. Are you going to be around in 75 years, and do you really care? Because archival is something that'll last at least 75 years. Well, I don't think we'll care. You know, color photography lasts 25 and it fades. Black and white photography lasts 150 years. And the only reason it starts to fade is that the paper that it's printed on starts to crumble. Because they use a metal, mineral dioxide, I think it is, on the surface. And that's a mineral that just doesn't break down. So your image will stay, but your paper erodes. So much for archival. And would I be around 150 years from now? No. So things are relative. But when I did the family genealogy, God bless computers and Photoshop, I was able to restore a lot of the photography and distribute it among family members. And so it can be revived and then reprinted on photo paper again, like Shutterfly. I don't even know if Kodak is still doing any processing. They've kind of moved into medical equipment now. They had to do something because the digital market stole their film market, so they just diversified, which was smart. Wow, I used a lot of that red. I'd add a little bit more. Yeah. Ooh, see that steamy red on the plate? Pink. You can almost see a pink cloud, a red cloud, and it's steamy. It's kind of fun. Gotta see art everywhere. Here's another thing. When I was living in the city before I moved to the country, you notice I'm laying on another layer of this. I think what I'm going to do, though, is I want to go ahead and put the washes in these other areas before I start the detailing it out. I think I'll just do this. Need a little more red. Now I'm adding water to this, just like that. And I'm kind of smearing the pigment around and filling that in. Now when I load this with red, watch this. It spreads, see? Goes, whee! That's a principle known as cohesion. So now I'm getting into the part, I kind of like that where the paper is curled. It's created a bend in the flower itself. So I think I'll just leave that. Now I was talking to my cousin about intuitive aspect of painting. You know, you just rely on your subconscious or your feelings about doing the detail work. It will tell you what the next step is. Very intuitive. Now, add a little water to that. Add a little pigment to that. So I'm just kind of blobbing it on right now. Now, if I was using another pigment, I'd have to worry about mixing with it, but I'm not. I'm just working on the red right now. So, what I'm doing in this second phase, this is the second phase, is I'm loading this up with nice water. Just slopping it on there. And I do each petal by itself. You don't have to try to do the whole flower. Because you got to remember your paper is going to absorb that water very quickly. So, there we go. See how that just sort of takes care of itself? No brainer. Whoop. I just leave that on there, and you might even tilt it a little. You roll it around. Woo, that's fun. This is the fun part. You don't want everything to be uniform, because if you do that, it's boring. Put some water on this. See, that color that I laid down doesn't move much. So I just put a little bit, just the tip of that intense red in, and I drop it in here, and see how it spreads? That's fun. Then you go here, oh, and here. And then you can go kind of like that, if you don't like that. See, that gives the flowers texture. I'm going to go to the next one. Oop. There we go. I'm putting some more of that intense red in. I'm going to drop it on the leaf. Oh, look at that. Oh, I forgot the water. There we go. Now I could come in and do even more water because it's wet. That's even more interesting, really. You know, it kind of tells you as it goes along what it wants to do. So again, I'm loading my brush with water and dropping it on the petal that I want to activate. There you have it. And each one of them is different. You want that because it is a plant. So the more you put on, the darker the red it gets. Now, I'll probably go back over these a little bit because I really like this a lot. And you notice that it troughed into this area dark and here, and you get the curve of the petal going there naturally. Alright. So we'll go to the next one. We'll see how this does. And keep the water within the petal because otherwise you're going to have red ink bleeding out, bleeding out in this area. And you don't want that because we're going to do something with that area much later though. Okay, so I put the water on. Come in with the pigment. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Let's see what it does. Spread it around. There you go. And don't worry about it being uniform. I'm going to add, I think, a little color here. Boop, there's a trough there. The paper's kind of curling, so it's creating that. Yeah, you can just smear it around if you don't want it to be too troughy. You just look at it and you say, well, do I like that? If I don't like that, change it. That's what makes you an individual as an artist. And I think we all know about individuality because we are that. I'm going to put this water on here. Then I'll take it and touch the pigment on the thing. I'm going to show you that. See how dark that is? I'm just touching the tip of the brush. Remember that the paint is going to get sucked up into here, so that's why you only need to touch a little bit of pigment. Now down in here, it's much darker because it's underneath another leaf. So I'm going to take this, and this would get too intense here, so I'm going to bring this out more. Like that. Now I can come in with a little bit of pigment if I want. Now, like I say, once you lay it down, it's there. Now I would leave that highlight, and I'll show you why later. Because there's more than red in a flower. That's something that my cousin asked me about, because the other one was a magenta color, and so in order to achieve the magenta you have to wait till this dries, and then we're going to what they call glaze it, a real thin color. Like I might use magenta on it. I'd probably put a little yellow in this one because they do have yellow in them later, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. So I'm going to wet this little leaf down here. And because it's small, be careful of how much paint you put on. You can always go back and add more. Always. Start cautiously. Now, I'm going to wait a while, and I'm going to probably, well, maybe not. Let me experiment here. I'm taking some very dark pigment, and I'm loading up the brush right here. And I'm going to just put a dot right there. Clean my brush and pull this down, because that creates the shadow. Did you see that? Okay. Okay, I'm going to go in here. And I'm working around the flower. Okay. Adding a little pigment to my brush off my palette. And I'm going just like up, not dark enough. Okay. I want to get that shadow in there. Okay. And what I do, I don't want to come in and load that up more, so while it's wet, I just spread it down. And then I just let it do its own thing. And it will. Okay, so this is developing up quite nicely. So again, this is the loading up with water. All I'm doing, just putting water in there. And then coming in with pigment. Now this is up underneath, so you want that. See right there? It's underneath the other petals, so I've loaded this up again with pigment and brought that out. Look at that. That's just forming on its own because of the water. Okay. Let's have a few more to do. Probably should have gone in and did these. I see I'm kind of boxing myself into a corner. So I'm going to turn this around and start attacking these little leaves, because I'm not going to be able to get in because it'll be wet. So, I'll box myself in. I'm going to add the water. Let's not do too much. Don't get ahead of yourself there, Judy. Okay, let's start up here. I could do this, get my hand out of the thing. I don't care how much you plan your videos. There's always something you could do a little bit better. There does take some organizing, thinking ahead, etc. I remember being so intimidated by watercolors that I took a class with this instructor that had the patience of Job, and I kind of like that. A little redder. That's kind of nice. I like that. And she got me through the fear. And it was really funny. I went back through some of my old files, and I had actually done watercolors before I acquired the fear of watercolors. I don't make any sense sometimes. I'd just forgotten I had tried it. Alright, I've only got 3 leaves to go here. Gonna load that up with water again. You know, I might do this video, I'm just thinking ahead a little bit, because I don't want it to be too lengthy. I may do it in 3 parts, and I'm showing you initially how to lay the color in. Oh, I forgot to put water on that. Okay, that's alright though. You're better than your mistakes, so there we go. Oh, one more petal to go. Anyway, do it in 3 parts. I have to wait for this to dry, and because I don't have the editing software down yet for making movies, if we waited to have it dry, this would really get lengthy. So I think I'll come in and create a second one, which will show you how to lay in the secondary color on the poinsettia leaves. The leaves and the flower. Now there's also something else I wanted to show you. This is called an alcohol marker, and there's nothing to say that I cannot go in here and make that yellow. This has got an alcohol base, so even if that's wet, it's still going to stand out. So we're going to try that. I'm going to try a 35. I'm using the small point, and I'm just going to put in the centers like that. And you'll notice that right around the edge where the red is, that bled in, it kind of gives you shape to that little core. So even in spite of that, this is still showing up yellow. So I'm going to go in there like that. But there you go. So you could go in with that. Another thing I could do with you on this video is to use colored pencils on the leaves, because this should be a sampler for you. Colored pencils on this, and show you how I activate that. Watercolor pencils. Yeah, you see I'm creating as I go. You get all kinds of ideas. Now I'm going to wait on this. I'm going to stop this video. I'm going to wait on this to dry, and then I'm going to do another video, and I'm going to bring out that flower even more, and then I'll do another video which will be with watercolor pencils on the leaves, which gives you another texture altogether. What I'm stressing here is that you can do a combination of tools like alcohol ink markers, watercolor pencils, or colored pencils for that matter, and then the layering of the different colors to achieve the life to the flower, because right now it's kind of flat, except for where the water created a variegation, I guess you would call it, on the surface of the leaves, which gives them not only character, but gives them life. Now when I go in to put a yellow wash on this after it's dry, that flower is going to stand out even more. So I'm going to stop this video for now, and I want you to pick up the second one, because I will load them up on my channel 1, 2, 3. Okay, so you'll be able to follow along. Anyway, thank you, and I'm going to go finish my coffee. Take care.